Donald Trump trying an economic reset, going to the crucial swing state of Pennsylvania, trying to get a jumpstart on the 2026 midterm push. It's going to be all hands on deck for Donald Trump on the midterm campaign trail. Can he salvage the Republican Congress next fall? Meanwhile, here in South Florida, a mayoral election goes against Republicans for the first time in 3 decades. What does all this mean for the midterms? All of that and much more on today's episode of The Josh Hammer Show. Well, if you've been listening to the show for a while now, you know that one of our major themes is that it is still the economy stupid. This does not require a data scientist or a space engineer to try to figure out why that is the case. Simply put, it is the case because the American people just don't feel that the economy is necessarily working for them. And we're going to get to Donald Trump's perspective on this there. We're going to get to public policy. We're going to get to all that in just a moment there. But right out of the gate, I want to just say this. It is one thing to tout economic statistics when it comes to this or when it comes to that. It is one thing to look, as we can easily do here, we can just look at the month-by-month inflation rates, and it's been hovering around 2.5% to 3% for this entire first year of the Trump presidency. That is substantially better than it was during really the entirety, actually, of the Biden administration. Infamously, it reached a 9.1% high all the way back in the summer of 2022. So whether it's inflation, whether it's the price of gasoline at the pump, amazingly, the average price of gasoline at the pump has come under $3 on average in 37 states. There were actually reports just the other day of, in some places in Colorado, in the Centennial State, of the price of gas at the pump getting as low as $1.69. I'm not saying that was in Denver, but I mean, that's crazy. Think about the last time that you saw $1.69 gasoline really anywhere. I'm not even sure that I could tell you. I'm frankly not sure that if it was anywhere that low during the entire 4 years of the first Trump term. But the point is this. We can toss around these numbers, talk about this all we want. But if the American people aren't feeling it, if the American people are not feeling it, then that ultimately is all that matters. The record is one thing. The statistics are one thing. But who is the economy there to serve? Is the economy there to serve the incumbent party or the opposition party's political fortune? Is the economy there to serve stock market investors, speculators, investment bankers, hedge fund managers? No, the economy is there to serve all of us. As is often said, we the people have an economy. The economy does not have we the people. It's somewhat of a platitude. It's somewhat trite to even say that, but it happens to be the case. And when you look at what we the people are actually saying when it comes to their view of the administration more generally, and of the economy perhaps in particular, there are some warning signs. We call it like we see it here in the Josh Hammer Show, and we're not afraid to say that some things simply have to change. So for instance, looking at the Real Clear Politics average of President Donald Trump's total job approval rating, he has a 9-point underwater spread at this point here based on the average. His approval rating is typically in the low to mid 40s, depending on the poll. Harry Enten, our friend over at CNN, who we'll have on the show probably in the next couple weeks, if I had to guess, we'll bring him back on. Harry Enten's been saying that at this point in the second term, Donald Trump's approval rating is historically low. Now, it's not, objectively speaking, -9, it's not minus double digits. It seems like it actually, frankly, could be worse. And certainly Joe Biden's approval rating for large swaths of his first term were actually worse. The relevant point that Harry's making when he says that is this. Presidents typically get a second term because they did well the first term. Donald Trump's first term actually very much was a smashing success. I happen to think that the first term of this presidency is, the first year of the second term, of this presidency, is going very well as well. Whether it comes to border crossings in the southern border, which have plummeted to near zero, when it comes to all of the amazing peace deals that have been secured all around the world, when it comes to the courageous operations to try to clean up America's cities with the National Guard cooperation, the ICE raids, the righteous crusades against higher education, the very, very successful Department of Justice led by Pam Bondi and the Solicitor General of the United States, John Sauer. They're doing an amazing job from a DOJ litigation perspective there. There's a lot to love about this administration, folks. But again, the point that I'm making to you is that what's happening currently is simply just not resonating, at least above all when it comes to the economy. So overall, Donald Trump 9 points underwater right now in the Real Clear Politics average on the approval-disapproval rating. Harry Ensign of CNN saying that that is historically low when it comes to a second-term president at this juncture in a second term. You probably have to go back to George W. Bush, who had a catastrophically unpopular second term during the nadir, the lowest point of the Iraq War. That was the Petraeus counterinsurgency and all that. You don't want to repeat that. You definitely don't want to repeat that. All you have to do is look to the 2008 presidential election, the massive landslide for Obama over McCain, to know what happens when you start going down that path of a deeply unpopular second-term presidency. Trump's not there yet, thankfully. There's still time to turn this around. But on the economy in particular, it's not great. Currently, again, according to the Real Clear Politics average, President Trump's approval metrics on the economy, he's an average of 15.1 points underwater. He has a net approval rating on average when it comes to the economy in particular of 40.7%, so nearly 41%. The approval rating actually goes down even further in some polls, so CBS News and Reuters Ipsos among the pollsters that have him in the mid-30s, 36% approval rating. Now, we can do the whole why thing, and indeed, Donald Trump, frankly, has been asking why a lot. So, for instance, here he did this long sit-down interview with Dasha Burns of Politico, one of the more intellectually honest journalists, by the way. Dasha Burns deserves some credit. We gave her some praise back during the 2022 senatorial race in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. It was back then, recall, this is when John Fetterman had the stroke. He was clearly not well on the campaign trail. I don't know if you all remember that infamous debate that he had against Dr. Oz, the general election debate for the 2022 Pennsylvania race. Well, the entire media cabal there in Pennsylvania, both the local press corps and above all the national press corps, was totally carrying water at the time for John Fetterman. Dasha Burns, who at the time was with NBC, now she's with Politico, she was one of the only journalists who was actually willing to call a spade and to just say it, like literally just say what the American people were seeing, that this guy is clearly not well. Now, all's well that ends well. I mean, John Fetterman has had some health issues since then. He's actually proved to be one of the brighter spots in the Senate Democratic caucus, for whatever it's worth, not necessarily saying a whole lot these days. Anyway, Dasha Burns deserves credit as a rare, intellectually honest journalist among the mainstream national press corps. So Donald Trump sat down with Dasha Burns for a long interview earlier this week, just a couple of days ago. And here was Donald Trump talking about how the economy, based on how he rates it, is an A+++++++++. Go ahead and watch this.
But I do want to talk about the economy, sir, here at home, and I wonder what grade you would give
A+.
your economy. A+.
Yeah, A++++++.
Well, it's interesting.
Okay, so again, there's a few things going on here. One, Trump's a politician. Okay, he's going to try and spin what's happening to try to boost his standing, to try to boost his stature, and try to just convey confidence. But the conveying of confidence goes two ways. You see, here is the interesting part when it comes to the economy. So John Maynard Keynes, not necessarily one of our favorite economists here on the Josh Hammer Show. He's probably the most well-known left-wing liberal economist of the entire 20th century. But John Maynard Keynes, among the famous lines that he coined there, was he referred to this notion of the animal spirits, which kind of sounds kind of pagan and not biblical. Hold that aside. But this notion of animal spirits conjures up that you just have to get people feeling confident again. Whether it comes to economic statecraft or, frankly, when it comes to trying to incentivize child rearing, trying to boost fertility rates, so much of public policy statecraft and political leadership more generally comes in just trying to instill hope and confidence and optimism in the people. This ends up being something of a feedback loop when it comes to economic public policy and economic statecraft in particular. Think about how economic commentators, economists more generally, talk about the economy. They'll say that inflation expectations have lowered or raised. Well, we're talking here about inflation expectations. Well, what's going to happen if inflation expectations go up? You'll start to save more money there. So there's a direct relationship then between expectations and reality. So part of the job of economic statecraft it's not necessarily to implement executive orders and to legislate from Congress. There's obviously a role for that, very much so. Part of it is just trying to instill confidence. So I totally understand what Donald Trump is doing here in this interview with Dasha Burns. On the other hand, you genuinely run the risk, Mr. President, of coming across as out of touch. I hate to say it, but I'm just going to call it like I see it. You run the risk of being out of touch. When your economic approval ratings are 15 points underwater on average, and you're saying that the economy is currently an A++++++, I had to make sure I got the correct number of pluses there in that vintage Trumpian answer to Dasha Burns of Politico, you run the risk of coming across as out of touch. This is what Joe Biden did, or more accurately, what Joe Biden's handlers did for years. Think about Jared Bernstein, his economic advisor. Think about Karine Jean-Pierre, thank God we're not dealing with her anymore, by the way, when it comes to the White House press secretary position from the lectern there in the White House. That's what they did. The Biden economic spin masters, the spin meisters, would try over and over again to try to say the economy is actually really good. Why, American people, why are you not just loving the economic product that we're selling? And ultimately, they were rejected. They were rejected, or more accurately, Kamala Harris was rejected after the bloodless coup of Joe Biden last summer. And they were rejected for that there. So this is a serious risk. It's a serious risk of coming across as overconfident. So what is one of these solutions here? Well, one of the solutions, according to Susie Wiles, who is the chief of staff of the White House, I saw her doing some media rounds. Susie's been doing some more media recently, which is kind of interesting in and of itself. And she's been saying that she wants to convince Donald Trump to get out there on the campaign trail and campaign on the economy and more generally in advance of the 2026 midterms next November, now 11 months away, to get out there and campaign just like it's 2016, 2020, or 2024. So on that note, Donald Trump was in Pennsylvania just last night. He was in the all-important swing state of Pennsylvania. He was at a casino in Mount Pocono, about a 2-hour drive, give or take, north of Philadelphia, a very beautiful part of the country for those of you who have been there. And if you have not been there, then perhaps you will go ahead and give it a visit. So Donald Trump speaking at this rally in Mount Pocono, Pennsylvania. Here are just a couple of things that he was saying last night. Go ahead and watch him talking about trying to slash taxes on certain types of income. Go ahead and watch this.
So putting thousands of dollars in the pockets of hardworking Pennsylvanians with the largest tax cuts in American history. That's no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, no tax on Social Security for our great seniors, no tax.
All right, so no tax on tips is a very good policy. I was supportive of it during the campaign trail when he first unveiled it out in Nevada, which has a huge industry of people who work at casinos, work in hospitality, and rely on tips. So I was supportive of it when he unveiled on the campaign trail. I still am. No tax on Social Security is a little more complicated because those Social Security taxes are a large part of the way that you pay for Social Security, which is already going bankrupt ASAP and is already something of a Ponzi scheme. Moreover, so I'm a little more lukewarm on that. Certainly, tax relief more generally is something that should be a concerted push as part of the reconciliation package next fall. So taxes are kind of quintessential Article 1, Section 8 congressional authority in America's tripartite separation of powers constitutional structure. It is a core congressional power. There's really only so much you can do when it comes to direct tax relief via the pen, via the executive order maneuver. You really do need Congress to get involved here. So certainly when you have this once a year reconciliation package where you're able to get around the threat of a filibuster, as long as you are doing so in a way that the Senate parliamentarian rules that you are reducing the budget deficit, you're going to have to make some sort of effort to really reduce the tax burden, especially for the working and the middle class. That's going to have to happen. It's going to have to be a non-negotiable item, frankly, in the legislative push come 2026, and ideally sooner rather than later in the year 2026. Here's a little bit more from Donald Trump in Mount Pocono, Pennsylvania, speaking about trying to help our farmers out when it comes to direct relief. Go ahead and watch President Trump from last night in Pennsylvania.
In order to try and negotiate, some countries played a little cute, and we just gave them right out of a tariff money, cost us nothing, right out of the hundreds of billions that we've taken in. We gave the farmers a little help, $12 billion, and they are so happy. And all they want is a level playing field. And now it's happening, and the tariffs are making them rich. It's going to be, you're going to see what happens over the next 2 years.
Okay, so the tariff conversation is a more complicated one. We recently had on Orrin Cass, the chief economist of American Compass, for an in-depth conversation on that. Make sure to go ahead and check out that conversation with Orrin Cass if you want some more granular detail on the tariff conversation. It is worth noting this, among other things. One, is worth noting that inflation, which is currently, as we said, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, currently around 3% on a month-by-month basis, that's not massively high. It is higher than 2.3%, which is what it was in early April, around the time that Donald Trump had that much ballyhooed sign that he was holding on so-called Liberation Day in the White House Rose Garden, unveiling much of the tariffs that are still in place today. So it has gone up. It has not gone up a tremendous amount. We can quibble as to the extent to which what the people, what the citizens, what the voters are now telling pollsters, they are reporting, sticker shock, essentially, when it comes to everything from chicken and produce and eggs at the supermarket to home building and home construction there. We can quibble as to whether or not the tariffs have a lot to do with it. I don't think it has a ton to do with it. I do think it probably has a little to do with it. Or on the other hand, whether or not it is the Biden inflation that is just taking long time, frankly, in this case, years, to then actually reflect itself when it comes to sticker shock, when it comes to menu prices at restaurants and things like that. It probably is more of the latter than the former, but the relevant point, again, to kind of hit our main theme of today's show, the relevant point is that it doesn't really matter at this point necessarily who is to blame. It doesn't necessarily even matter at this point what these statistics are. What matters above all for the Republican Party as it heads into what looks like a potentially very, very ominous midterm election next fall, what matters is what the American people say. That is politics. Politics is meeting the people where they are. Yes, you try to guide them gently. You try to gently nudge them when they are in an incorrect spot. You try to lead with clarity and conviction and so forth there. But you have to meet the people where they are. And the people right now are not super duper happy when it comes to the economy. By the way, this specific notion of a $12 billion bailout for America's farmers, I hate to say it, but this bailout probably would not have been necessary were it not for the tariffs in the first place. We're talking here about bailing out farmers for certain types of goods that have tariffs on them. And because you have tariffs, then you have retributive tariffs, and a lot of these farmers have not been able to export a lot of their goods when it comes to things like soybean farmers out in Iowa and places like that there. So I'm happy that America's farmers are being helped, but there's a very real argument to be made that none of this bailout would have frankly been necessary at all were it not for the tariffs in the first place. Now, to say that the Trump administration has to make a concerted effort when it comes to the economy, which they absolutely should do when it comes to trying to get tax relief in the reconciliation package, when it comes to working with red states, working with Republican states, when it comes to streamlining the costs of constructing and building new homes. This is really one of the biggest, most pressing financial economic issues facing young Americans at this time, is the incredibly daunting price of new home ownership in America. Take it from me. I am very much in that position myself. I speak of what I know in this particular case there. So the administration, there's not a ton you can do at a federal level here other than the broader debate when it comes to the Fed, when it comes to interest rates, mortgage policy, things like that there. I'll tell you, the 50-year mortgage policy is not the way to do this. We discussed that on a previous show at the time. But what the administration can do is they can show leadership from their public policy team, from the Domestic Policy Council. They can get involved and call up Governor Abbott in Texas, Governor DeSantis here in Florida, Governor Lee in Tennessee. Call up some of the major red state governors and try to work with them on granular state legislative policy, trying to cut red tape, to trim the cost of regulation and the cost of surveying and permitting and all the various things that are now contributing to exorbitant home ownership prices in far too many states in America. That is a quintessential area for state and local authority. It is a police power. It's not one of the enumerated powers of the federal government, but it's relevant for the federal government. It's relevant for the incumbent political party Republicans because, again, you need to get those animal spirits flowing. You have to get the people start spending and be confident again and just feeling like they are a part of this economy, that this rising tide really actually is lifting all boats there. Only if that happens, then, do Republicans really have any chance of being successful in the elections next fall. Now, one thing that I do hear from a lot of folks talking here about this new concerted effort. Susie Wiles saying that Trump's going to hit the campaign trail. He's going to campaign his rear end off when it comes to the economy. I do hear a lot of folks, including even some rather weak, shall I say, voices on the right saying that Trump should abandon his immigration agenda. Just focus all on the economy. What's this whole immigration thing there? And no, that is wrong. That also is wildly wrong. Immigration is Trump's issue. Immigration has been Trump's issue. Trump won 2 presidential elections and came awfully close to winning a third in a deeply contested election, a deeply contested year more generally. He won these elections with immigration as his core issue. You ask 100 voters out there, how many of them will say that immigration is Donald Trump's number one issue? 95? Maybe 5 to 10 will say the economy just because it's Trump. He's a billionaire. He's been successful in real estate, casinos, blah, 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 blah. But he's an immigration guy. So the people know what they knew what they voted for. There is nothing surprising whatsoever about what Kristi Noem and Tom Homan are doing when it comes to the ICE raids, when it comes to working on border wall construction on the U.S.-Mexico border, when it comes to getting illegal border crossings and encounters with CBP down to near zero, which he has done. It's been a 90+% reduction from the Biden era there. Amazing stuff there. And the polls, by the way, bear this out. So I was reading this recent post from Ryan Girdusky, who is an excellent Substacker. I encourage you to go ahead and check out Ryan's Substack. He Substacks at a place called the National Populist Newsletter. I was reading just some data about this. Naturalized immigrants, so ones who can vote legally, are split on how Trump has handled immigration. 41% saying he's been too tough, 40% saying his approach has been about right or not tough enough. So it's basically a coin flip about how immigrants themselves feel about Trump's immigration policy. How about Hispanic Americans more generally? Well, Trump's overall approval rating among Latinos actually mirrors that very much of other American voters. His approval rating is roughly the same among immigrants as it is with the general public. Again, they're in the low 40s, as we discussed earlier in the show. So there's all sorts of polling data to suggest that Hispanic voters, immigrants, really none of them are out of step with the American people more broadly when it comes to Donald Trump's immigration agenda. So I see very little, if any, reason for Donald Trump to start to back away from immigration. What I'm saying instead is to just focus on the economy. You can walk and chew gum at the same time. You don't have to give up on the economy, or on immigration. You don't have to give up, frankly, on anything. You don't have to give up on your righteous crusades against higher education, try to get these settlements from more offensive Ivy League schools that are blatantly offending the Civil Rights Act when it comes to discrimination against white people, Christians, Asians, Jews, etc. All that can stay. All that is very good stuff there. But every single day, the White House and Republican leadership in the Congress should begin their day and say, what can I do today to get this administration's economic messaging and policy in a place where it is more popular with the American people? That should be the first question in the morning. And when you go to sleep at night, you should say, what did I do that day to further these goals of making sure the American people know that this economy is not only objectively good on a statistical or metrics basis, but is actually working for them? That is the most important thing. Because there was yet another data point last night, and I'm not going to freak out about this, but it is another interesting data point indicating that there are potentially some darker things in the future for next year's midterms if this doesn't turn around. So, for instance, here in South Florida, where I live, a Democrat just won the city of Miami's mayoral race for the first time in nearly 3 decades. Now, this isn't quite as shocking as it might be. That's why I'm hedging here very much. The city of Miami did break very mildly by a couple points or so for Kamala Harris over Donald Trump in the 2024 presidential election. Moreover, Miami-Dade County, which is the broader county that the smaller city of Miami is, Miami-Dade County continues to be a red bastion. It broke for DeSantis by double-digit points in 2022 and continued to vote for Donald Trump in 2024. Also, the timing of this runoff election was really, really, really bizarre, happening here between Thanksgiving and Christmas, very similar to the special election in Tennessee's 7th Congressional District last week. Very bizarre timing. Very, very low turnout election as well, actually. The combined turnout of the combined vote total of the two candidates ends up being under 40,000 people. So low turnout election, off year, bad timing. Having said all that, still a big deal, is it not? I mean, it's still not small deal. I'll put it to you that way. It's very much not a small deal. So you have Eileen Higgins, who's a former county commissioner in Miami-Dade County, who did become the first Democrat to win the mayoral election in the city of Miami in nearly 3 decades. Let's go ahead and take a listen briefly to Eileen Higgins, the mayor-elect in the city of Miami, Florida.
We will lead a city that belongs to everyone. A city where seniors can stay, young people can build a future, immigrants feel welcomed and respected.
All right, so Higgins won by 8 points. Now, Democrats have a 5-point voter registration advantage in the city of Miami. Again, I don't think this is a huge deal, but it's not a small deal. Francis Suarez, who is the very moderate Republican mayor of Miami, has been in charge for a while now. Your mileage may vary as to whether or not you like his track record, but if nothing else, he was more broadly speaking on the side of freedom and capitalism. And I'm kind of using platitudinous buzzwords deliberately because Suarez doesn't really stand for a whole lot other than that. But at minimum, he was better than the opposition there. So will Higgins continue this momentum that has really boosted South Florida to one of the top economic engines in America? It'll be interesting to see, won't it? Higgins will certainly have some opposition in Tallahassee when it comes to Governor DeSantis there. But when you look at that, when you look at the tighter margin of the Tennessee special election that recently happened, when you look at Mamdani getting not just a plurality, but an outright majority in New York City, when you look at Jay Jones, who once said that he wanted to kill his political opponents, winning the Virginia Attorney General election there are more than enough data points now when it comes to the election, when it comes to the polls, to say that this is now a 5-alarm fire. This is a 5-alarm fire. And, look, the foreign stuff is important. We care certainly a lot about foreign affairs. We care a lot about trying to get a peace deal between Russia and Ukraine. I care a lot about trying to stop the drug cartels and the traffickers in Central America. We've been strong proponents here of the prophylactic preemptive strikes on the narco boats. We've been strong supporters of Pete Hegseth and all they're doing there when it comes to strikes on the boats. But all that stuff just pales in comparison. As important as I think it is, as important as you may think it is. It's economy first, economy always. And unless and until the economy just starts really revving again, Republicans really could be in something of a world of hurt. So that is our main takeaway message, certainly for today. Now, the one way that they could potentially not be in a world of hurt, there was actually a very interesting case at the Supreme Court yesterday. Depending on how this case comes out, how a related case comes out, Republicans could potentially have their chances mitigated or their likelihood of losses mitigated come fall 2026. So the case yesterday was NRSC, so National Republican Senatorial Committee versus FEC, Federal Election Commission, involving whether or not the statutory limits on how much a political party can spend on a political candidate directly coordinating with that candidate, whether that statutory limit is constitutional, whether it is a First Amendment violation. Somewhat difficult to tell when it comes to reading the tea leaves of this argument. Amy Coney Barrett, when the swing justice, was silenced. Neil Gorsuch was broadly silent as well. This is in a long line of cases, very much including the controversial Citizens United case of 2010, involving campaign finance laws and their interaction with the First Amendment. One of the interesting things that Brett Kavanaugh, another swing justice, raised at yesterday's argument in this case, NRSC versus FEC, the interesting thing that Kavanaugh said is that the effect of Citizens United and all these laws have had the effect of restricting the extent to which political parties can directly spend money and emboldening outside third-party actors, PACs, corporate PACs, political PACs, things like that there. Not necessarily the best thing for democracy, say a lot of people there, so that might be another reason to possibly try to abolish or to hold that this law is not constitutional. Now, what I was saying, though, is that depending on how this goes out, there are some Republicans, some consultants and so forth there, folks like Chris LaCivita, who was a longtime Trump inner circle hand, Tony Fabrizio, who was a longtime Trump pollster. They did, apparently, just over this past weekend, there was some RNC donor retreat, and they said this past weekend that the ruling on this case, as well as the forthcoming ruling when it comes to congressional redistricting, So Republicans already got a win in the Texas redistricting case. There's going to be some other redistricting cases as well involving the Voting Rights Act, very, very, very high-profile voting rights litigation. So depending on how that case comes out, depending on how this case comes out, say Chris LaCivita and Tony Fabrizio, that could actually help Republicans at the ballot in 2026. But the point that I will make is this. You don't want to rely on the court, guys. You don't want to rely on the court to do the right thing. The number of times that politicians have relied on the court to do the right thing and then have been utterly disappointed, it's too high to count. Do you know the tariffs, by the way? There is currently a massive tariff case. The entire legal argument behind Donald Trump's tariffs, namely this Jimmy Carter era, late 1970s emergency statute, the entire legitimacy of invoking that statute for these tariffs is currently pending before the court too. You don't really want to do that. You want to have backup plans in place there. You don't want to rely on the court there. So I would encourage the Republicans, don't rely on the court doing the right thing. Get out there and actually do the right thing. That is a much, much, much safer task overall. Now, I want to talk a little bit here in the final minutes of the show about something quite a bit different. I've been meaning to do this for the past couple of days. I just haven't necessarily had the time. We'll see if how emotional I got here. I don't necessarily. I think I've only cried once on the show. It was after Charlie Kirk was assassinated. We will see, I suppose, if that happens again today. I'm not entirely sure. My daughter turns 1 year old this Saturday. She was born on December 13th of last year. And we had our birthday party this past Sunday here in South Florida where we live. And we called it her first rodeo. Her first rodeo, just kind of it's a very common phrase, right? It's not my first rodeo. Okay, so this was her first rodeo. And we worked with vendors, we had the decorations, we had a drink station, it was called her watering hole. We had like a little barn. We got ponies and farm animals. We had like a ball pit and balloons for the kids. It was a really, really, really beautiful event. And my wife deserves all the credit in the world. I cut the check. She did all the work. Amazing stuff. I mean, working with the vendor that we worked with there. And when you watch in this party, my wife had this montage where we took our daughter and there was a photo of every month of her life from 1 month until she's 1 year old. And every time I looked at that, I just started crying. I mean, I just could not hold back the emotions. Not only because she's beautiful, which she is, not only because she's amazing, which she is. She's actually in I think it's the 98th percentile for weight and the 95th percentile for height. So she's a big girl. She's physically flourishing, and she's flourishing in every other way that a baby can be flourishing as well. So that's amazing, but I just can't believe it. I just cannot believe how fast this has gone. And I realize this is like the most cliche thing ever, right? I mean, first-time father, can't believe how quickly okay, but here I am. And it just feels like it went away in the blink of an eye. It feels like just yesterday, I was in the shower, actually, when my wife yelled, "My water broke." It was last December. I was like, "Oh my God, what do we do? What do we do? I haven't packed a bag for the hospital. What do we do?" She was actually much calmer than I in that situation. So we packed the bag, went to the hospital, and praise be to God, our baby was born healthy and beautiful the next afternoon, less than 24 hours later. But it just feels like it went by so fast. And at the risk of saying the obvious, I guess my message would be this. Think of life as follows. Try to think of life as someone once told me. You have a jar, and you try to then fill the jar with certain marbles. And the marbles can be multicolored. We can have green marbles, blue marbles, red marbles, whatever. You want to first fill the cup with the most important type of marbles. And that's how you should try to live every single day of your life. I am not perfect at this. I fail. We all fail. We're humans. We're made in God's image. We are not God. But you should try to fill your cup every day of your life to the extent possible with the most important things in your life. In my life, the most important things are pretty clear. It's God first. it's family second, and then it's everything else. It's my job, my country, all the things that I care about, and then we talk about every day on this show. And my recent day-to-day routine has been more or less trying to do that in order. So I recently changed my day-to-day routine. I wake up very early nowadays. I wake up around 5 a.m., give or take. I am in synagogue by 6 a.m., give or take, ready for morning prayers. I get home by around 7:30, give or take. I have some quality time with my wife and our baby in the morning there, helping feed and to play and to just try to entertain. All of that really before I kind of sit down and begin to do my actual job for the day. Now, easier said than done. Everyone's life is different. Everyone's schedule is different there. It's not easy. It's really hard, actually, to try to balance all the amount of things that human beings have to balance over the course of your day. It's really difficult as well to balance everything over the course of a week or a lifetime. You know, Charlie Kirk has a brand new book out posthumously. His wife, Erica, has been doing the media rounds promoting it. The book is called Stop in the Name of God. It's a book about the Sabbath. Charlie was an evangelical Christian, but was very, very, very inspired by the Hebrew Bible, by the Torah. He used to study the Torah with Dennis Prager. Many of his mentors, intellectual mentors, and closest friends kept the Sabbath or some version of it. And Charlie would really turn his phone off when Orthodox Jews like myself do, from Friday night to Saturday night. It's an amazing built-in gift from God, trying to give you the freedom, the ability to fill your cup up with the most important marbles, to focus on God, on the creator of all things, to focus on your family, with no distractions and with a clear head. But only by living, I think, with that kind of deliberation, with that kind of conscientious prioritization of that which you are doing each and every day. I've come to think that really is the best way to live your life. When I was a little younger, I was a little more scattershot. I didn't have a family. I wasn't particularly observant or religious at that time. And I wouldn't set an alarm. Or maybe I would if I had like the office or the work, whatever. But I would sleep in a little bit, and I would kind of just play the day as it goes, play it by ear, day in and day out. But you should have more structure, and that structure should reflect your life priorities. That structure should reflect the most important marbles that they are going to be filled first. And as a first-time father, now on the cusp of celebrating our daughter's first birthday this Saturday, after we just had this wonderful rodeo Western-themed party for her this past Sunday, I truly feel it's never been more important. I truly feel that it's never been more important for me to cling to this, to cherish every moment. What ultimately is going to be more important? What am I going to remember a year or two from now? That memory of being goofy with her in the living room at 8:30 a.m., or scrolling Twitter, or reading some article at the Wall Street Journal, whatever. Now, you have to do your job. You have to do it well. Again, these things are easier said than done. And I don't judge anyone who struggles with these trade-offs. I do too. We all do. Again, we're human. But try the best you can to fill that cup each and every day with the most important marbles. I can promise you that if you do that and you make a conscientious effort to do exactly that, then you're going to be happier. And you will feel more fulfilled, and you will feel more confident in all that you do on a day-to-day basis moving forward. So, look, I mean, I wish my daughter a very happy first birthday, to put it mildly. It's been an amazing, amazing year, and I can't wait to see where she goes from here. I hope that advice resonates with you, and we thank you, as always, for listening or watching to The Josh Hammer Show. Make sure to like and subscribe if you have not already done so. Leave us that 5-star review. We always appreciate your feedback. We're on YouTube over at Newsweek's YouTube page, also available at the Salem News Channel. But for now, I'm Josh Hammer, and I hope you enjoyed today's episode of The Josh Hammer Show.